The 2024-2025 MLB offseason is officially upon us, and everyone's talking about Juan Soto. Where is he going to go? But what about some other players that are on teams right now that could get traded? That's today's video. We're going to talk about 25 stars/all-stars who could get traded in the next few months. First man up, we have Alec Bohm, the guy who plays the hot corner for the Phillies, their third baseman. I truly believe that because of his lack of success in the playoffs, the Phillies might have to move on from him, and they could replace him with an Alex Bregman or with another third baseman via a trade. Now, Alec did have 44 doubles and a near 120 OPS plus with 97 RBIs this past season, but again, he stunk it up in the playoffs. He went 1 for 13. He swung at the first pitch almost every single at bat. He has a career .214 batting average in the playoffs with a .295 on base. That's not going to cut it, and they might have to hit the reset button. Let's talk about some Sox players. First, the Red Sox, and then the White Sox. Masataka Yoshida, this dude has been decent. I'll give him that. He's been decent, but the fact that he's almost making $20 million to be a light-hitting, almost slap hitter DH, I don't really think that the Red Sox want to keep that guy in their lineup, especially because they have so many lefties. And speaking of another lefty, Wilyer Abreu, he had a very productive rookie season, but because the Red Sox also have a lefty, Roman Anthony, who is the #1 prospect in all of baseball, expect Masataka Yoshida or Wilyer Abreu to be moved in the next few weeks. I'm saying weeks. It's kind of crazy to admit that the guy that we just talked about, Wilyer Abreu, had a better season than Luis Robert Jr., a Gold Glover, an All-Star. He really fell off in 2024, and maybe that's because he had no protection in that lineup, but he hit .224 with an 87 OPS plus, and the biggest reason why he could get traded is he's a free agent in 2026. That's coming up pretty quick. But because of his track record, I mean, you go back to 2023 where he had 36 doubles and 38 home runs. People might overlook 2024 because it was the worst season in baseball history. Luis's teammate Garrett Crochet is most likely going to get moved as well. I'm kind of shocked that he wasn't moved during the season, but he joined elite company as one of the only pitchers in baseball history to have 200 strikeouts despite not even pitching 150 innings. That's insane stuff. In his first full season as a starter, he had a 3.5 ERA with a 13 strikeouts per 9. You can't find a guy who's that tall, who throws that hard, and can really manage the strike zone. He had a 2 walks per 9. It's crazy that you might have to trade these guys because a Luis Robert Jr. and Garrett Crochet is a pretty solid duo to build your team around, but the White Sox are so far from competing, you might as well get the biggest bang for your buck and trade them now. If you do end up trading for a Luis Robert Jr., you're essentially trading for the outfield version of Bo Bichette, because we know that Luis and Bo have been megastars in the past, but both Luis and Bo regressed in 2024. I'm going to use Bo as my wild card, so he's not one of the 25 players because the Blue Jays have already said he's not going to get traded, but considering how bad he was last year, he's a free agent after this next season, so maybe they do wait until the trade deadline, and it doesn't make sense to talk about him in today's video, but if the Blue Jays get an offer they can't refuse, they will trade Bo. Is it going to happen? Probably not, but I wanted to make sure he was in this video because it makes sense to trade him, maybe just not right now. Maybe the same thing can be said for Brett Baty, who, I mean, if you go back a few years, we're talking about prospects that are a surefire hit, they're going to rake in the big leagues. Brett Baty was widely considered to be one of the more well-rounded hitters in the entire minor leagues, but ever since he's been called up, he's had flashes of greatness and shown that he can be a dude, but consistently, he's been pretty bad. Unfortunately, he's developed the reputation of being a 4A player that is a guy who's way too good for AAA, but not good enough yet for the majors. This is all kind of dependent on what they do with Pete Alonso. If they bring Pete Alonso back at first base, Mark Vientos is going to stay at third. Perhaps they don't re-sign the Polar Bear and Mark Vientos goes to first base and Brett Baty gets a chance. Again, it's all dependent on Pete Alonso. Do you remember how special Adolis Garcia was to end 2023? He had one of the best playoffs we have ever seen, batting over .320 with 8 home runs and 22 RBIs. Unfortunately, he followed up by being not so great in the regular season of 2024. Now, don't get me wrong, 27 doubles, 25 home runs, and 85 RBIs are still pretty good counting stats, but you can't just ignore the fact that his on-base dropped almost 40 points. He went from a near 130 OPS plus to a sub 95 OPS plus in a year where offense was down. His OPS in general dropped by 150 points. On top of that, the defense completely fell off a cliff. He had a -5 DRS and the outs above average didn't like him either. Another 2023 world champion who could get traded, he's a guy who's no longer with the Rangers, J-Mo, Jordan Montgomery, his own owner, we're talking about the Diamondbacks owner now, pretty much raised his hand and said, hey, I'm the guy who gave Jordan Jordan Montgomery all that money. It's wasted money. He was awful, and then Jordan kept on complaining and making an excuse that because he didn't have a spring training, he just wasn't going to be good for the entirety of 2024. There just doesn't seem to be a great relationship with J-Mo and the Diamondbacks. I'd say, just like Brett Baty, a fresh start is needed. If Jordan Montgomery is putting 2024 in the rearview mirror, Jesus Luzardo of the Marlins is probably doing the same thing. He went from a 10.5 strikeouts per nine in both 2022 and 2023 to a 7.8 strikeouts per nine last season. Yes, that's in large part because he didn't have a full year. His last game was June 16th, and on June 4th, he got lit up for 9 earned runs. That's why his ERA ballooned to a 5 for the season. I do believe that he'll bounce back, but to me, because of the Marlins' path going forward, it's not going to be with Miami. We talked about Alec Bohm having a very productive 2024 regular season campaign and then falling off in the playoffs. The exact same scenario can be applied to Josh Naylor, who was a first-time All-Star who swatted 31 home runs, had 108 RBIs, and near 120 OPS plus, only to just have his power zapped in October. Like a lot of players in this video, he will be a free agent after next year. We know how it works with Cleveland, and the on-field reporter, Andre Knott for the Guardians, he's already basically said that these guys know how it goes. It's not personal, it's just business in Cleveland. Josh Naylor, he's gonna get flipped. By the way, if any of these guys get traded and you wanna see their new team debut, be sure to use code Fuzzy on SeatGeek to save 20 bucks off all of your tickets, including football tickets, basketball, hockey, and don't forget to use code Fuzzy when you download Underdog Fantasy, because when you're a first-time user and you download with my code, you get access to a lot of free pick'ems and promos. The Brewers are not a team that give out a lot of money in free agency, and because Devin Williams is going through pretty much the same thing that Corbin Burnes went through, the relationship to me is probably going to get soured. They're not going to be able to retain Devin in free agency. We just know that's how the Brewers work. They're kind of the NL version of the Guardians. They're pretty good at development. They have a great pitching staff, but they don't spend a ton of money. Devin Williams, goodbye. There's another team in the same conversation as the Guardians and the Brewers, teams that don't spend a lot of money, but they somehow always make a playoff push, or they're always in the running to make the playoffs. The Tampa Bay Rays, the reason why they've been so good is because they identified Yandy Diaz and they got him for belly button lit and peanut M&Ms from the Guardians a few years ago. Brandon Lau has been a huge contributor as well, one of the more underrated power hitting second basemen of this generation. The Rays have already picked up Brandon's 2025 team option of $10.5 million. He's only getting paid $11.5 million. So the fact that you can get a power hitting second baseman for the next 2 years is going to be a huge asset for some playoff contenders. Yandy Diaz, he's a free agent after next year. Again, the Rays, they do this. It's gonna happen. I almost put Nolan Arenado in this video, but then I remembered he has a full-blown no-trade clause, and I do think that the Cardinals saw his increase in bat speed as the season aged. Maybe he was injured, but if there is one guy that the Cardinals might be okay flipping because his value has almost never been higher, Ryan Helsley is probably gonna get moved. Because he has a sub-2 ERA since 2022, he led Major League Baseball with 49 saves last year with 79 strikeouts and 66 innings. Helsley is still disgusting, but when you look at the strikeout numbers, they've gone down year after year after year, while the hits per nine have gone up year after year after year. He's only getting older. You can flip him to the Phillies and get some pretty good prospects in return. Everything that I just said about Ryan Helsley can be applied to Kyle Finnegan, the closer for the Nationals. He's not going to be the closer for Washington for that much longer because he's a free agent after 2025, and he just had a monster season with 38 saves. He did only have 60 strikeouts in 63 innings. You want your closer to be a little bit more dominant, and he can be dominant in stretches. He's a 33-year-old, soon-to-be free agent closer who just had his best season. If he's not trade bait, I don't know who can be. The stats I'm about to read to you are not from Aaron Judge. They're not from prime Barry Bonds. They're from Brent Rooker of the Oakland Athletics. From the first game of July to the end of the season, Brent Rooker in 74 games put up a whopping 24 home runs with a disgusting .323 batting average, a .614 slugging, and ultimately a 1.005 OPS. Oh, and by the way, he managed to steal 9 bases. And considering he's a free agent in 2028, why on earth would the A's give away a guy like that? Well, the reason why you would trade him now as opposed to next year is, what if he regresses? What if he's like that one guy for the Cubs, Frank Schwindel, who destroyed Major League Baseball for a year and then fell off a cliff? No, I don't believe that Brent is the next Schwindel, but it has happened before. Chase Headley popped off and then he goes to the Yankees and stunk it up. if you want to maximize the trade value for Brent Rooker, you got to do it now. I mean, just look at what happened to Jonathan India. He won Rookie of the Year back in 2021, where he put up a 4.1 WAR on Baseball Reference with 34 doubles, 21 home runs, and a near 380 on base. He hasn't even come close to that since. I'll give him credit though. He did stay healthy and bounced back a little bit last season. He had 28 doubles, 15 home runs, and a 105 OPS plus. But remember, offense was down last year. A 105 OPS plus for a 750 OPS, it's decent, but it's not great. He's also a bottom of the barrel defender at second base, so when you factor in Matt McClain coming back, they have Noelvi Marte and Elly De La Cruz. There's nowhere to play Jonathan India unless he somehow converts to first base. But then they have that other guy, Christian Encarnacion Strand, but maybe he's a DH. There's no way they don't trade India. The Orioles are experiencing something similar in Ryan Mountcastle at first base because they have so many young guys coming up like a Kobe Mayo. Maybe he's not a third baseman. They have other guys who probably could fill in the gap left behind by Mountcastle pretty easily. Just listen to these stats. He went from 33 home runs in 2021 to 2022 home runs, 18 home runs, and 13 home runs. It's time to move on. Jordan Westburg is your third baseman of the future. You're obviously going to go gunner at shortstop with Jackson Holliday at second base and Kobe Mayo at first. Which begs the question, where is Jorge Mateo going to play? He's not going to be playing over Colton Cowser or Cedric Mullins. Perhaps if Anthony Santander leaves, he's going to be a utility guy. Jorge Mateo is going to get traded as well. No, he's not an everyday player, but for a guy who mashes lefties, can steal 20 to 30 bags if you give him the chance and plays Gold Glove defense, I feel like, yeah, a team is going to take a flyer on him. There's just not a lot of room left for him on the Orioles. We have 6 players left in today's video, but only 3 teams remaining: the Cubs, the Angels, and the Yankees. Let's talk about the Angels first before we talk about the Yankees and the Cubs. The Angels, they got to get rid of Taylor Ward and Luis Rengifo. I probably shouldn't have said get rid because it makes it seem like they haven't been that good, but we're talking about a Taylor Ward who had 25 home runs last year and 23 back in 2022, but because he got on base 36% of the time, he had a near 140 OPS plus. He'll be a free agent after the 2026 season, while Luis Rengifo, he's going to be 28 years old and he'll be a free agent after next year. He hit 300 with 24 stolen bases and a near 350 on base. He's a switch hitter, by the way. He's kind of the new age Jorge Polanco, kind of just a younger version of Polanco, where he's going to get you some doubles. He's going to maybe hit 300 for a stretch, but for the most part, he has bricks for hands. But I'm just so sick of betting on the Angels and expecting them to have a turnaround season. It seems like it never happens. Maybe they cut bait with these guys and give them a fresh start and a chance to go chase playoff success. They're not going to do it with Mike Trout, apparently, which Mike is going to be an Angel forever, I guess. The Chicago Cubs, I can't believe I'm saying this, but they might have to move on from Nico Hoerner, not because Nico Hoerner is bad or anything, but because they have a young stud in the making by the name of Matt Shaw. Not only do I believe that Nico Hoerner is going to get moved, but Jameson Taillon, because of the rare success that he had to end 2024, the Cubs, if you do not trade him and capitalize on that slight momentum, you are dumb. Jameson's saving grace is the fact that he was able to somewhat correct the walks and allow fewer hits, despite the fact that his strikeouts fell off a cliff last year. I don't understand how Jameson was actually pretty decent last year. I just don't have a lot of faith in an almost 33-year-old Jameson Taillon, considering his strikeouts, they were a career low last year. Maybe he's going to be a Kyle Hendricks type of guy, where he misses bats but doesn't rely on strikeouts. Maybe I'm strikeout obsessive. Who knows? One thing we know for sure, though, the Yankees, they love Austin Wells. Jose Trevino, he's had a good little stint with the Yankees. He's gone, though. In a perfect world, as a Guardians fan, I really wish that they would just sit down with Austin Hedges and say, hey, buddy, can you just not play anymore and be a coach? We'll give you the same money, but be a coach. And then they could have traded for a Jose Trevino to hit lefties when Bo Naylor wasn't in the game. That would have been awesome. It's just that Austin Wells progressed a whole lot faster than we all anticipated. And when I say progressed, I'm talking about as a framing catcher. He's also fairly decent at blocking. Another guy I believe that is going to get traded, the final player of today's video, nasty Nestor Cortez, who might not be nasty anymore. And yes, I still would have brought up Nestor Cortez even if he got Freddie Freeman out and didn't give up that walk-off grand slam. Nestor, he's a free agent after this upcoming season. He does not want to be a bullpen guy, and the Yankees rotation is getting a little bit too full. He's a perfect trade candidate. And there you have it, 25 players and a wild card who could get traded over the next few months. I hope they all happen because I love chaos.